When we talk about DEI, people get really upset and they're very passionate about it because they think that something, merit, is being traded away.
Business owner, educator, and lifelong observer of politics and economics, making sense of complex issues.
Today, I want to explain what DEI means to me and be sure that people understand when I say DEI what it means to me. And it means much more beyond just race. It's sex, it's sexual preference, it's neurodiversity, it's age, it's religion, it's ethnicity, it's physical ability, it's mental ability, it's all those things. So let's see if I can have a conversation with you and share some of my thoughts on DEI as I take into account some of the things that people have told me about hiring practices and sports and examples that they've used to argue for merit. Bearing in mind also that my goal in a world that has DEI is to improve merit, to widen that pool, not make it smaller. So, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Let's not get stuck on just that first word. Let's think about what that really means for us as a society. We moved in the 80s, for example, to close down mental institutions. And following through decades of advancement in the social contract, we began to include people with differing abilities into society, into the workplace, into schools, and into our society as much as we could with training and employment and teachers' assistants in classes. And, we added ramps and we've improved our infrastructure so that it goes beyond just what is, I think, sometimes a narrow definition of DEI that gets hung up on the first word. The other side of it is meritocracy. And merit is, the basis of how we choose people. There's nothing wrong with choosing the best person. The problem with that is overarching all of this for me is that there's not one single best person. You can't possibly, with the narrow pool that you're looking at, choose the best person for the job. If you're in New York and you're not interviewing people from LA, you're already in a small pool, let alone the rest of the world, let alone the diversity that exists in society. So let's remember that when we correctly want to look for the best person for the job, the best person for the job doesn't exist. The best people for the job do. And if we are able to expand access to that pool, partly for ourselves and partly on the other side, that is that those people with similar or the same skills as the regular people that would turn up for an interview have access to be there, that we also have the ability to see them. So first of all, let's think of sports, and I brought this up in a live that I cut into a clip that I put on social media, and yeah, it was clumsy. Sports is meritocratic. The best players win. In sports, there is only one winner. But if we do take the sports analogy a little bit to look at teams, that's where things can be a little bit different. Now, there are going to be in sports and in society teams where one star carries them all. That's going to happen. But if we have a team that is, say, all goalkeepers in a soccer team, that's not going to work really well. I may be developing another clumsy analogy here. But if we take a team in a corporation where they're all soccer players, that may be the normal working conditions. But if we mix that up a bit, if we add some varying types of people into that, we find that we get varying opinions that forces each other to think and confront their standardized norms. That in a homogenous team, you would find most people soon agreeing with you. But let's talk about the data. People have asked me the data, and data is important. I just don't like talking about it. But it's there. It is available. The one that I find comes up most is the McKinsey study. That was a study of over 1,000 large companies. The Harvard Business Review published multiple papers as well, and the World Bank and the OECD have had all similar findings. And the result is companies that have inclusive cultures tend to innovate and experience lower turnover. They see improved productivity and, just generally better results, better innovation. Now, that doesn't mean that diversity is the magic potion that makes every corporation better. You've got to include training with this. And this is some of the things that in the culture wars people have come up against. They see this training as being imposed on them, but it's necessary to have this training to, I may be developing another clumsy analogy here, but it's like, using new equipment. You don't just give a business a new piece of equipment and tell everyone to go for it. People have got to learn how to use it, and they've got to adapt to it, and they've got to, see the results and grow with it. And in that sense, this is why the training has to be done coinciding with the increase in diversity in the organization. So someone also mentioned that countries like, I think it was Norway, well, let's just go with Northern Europe, are, doing exceptionally well. Their economies are good, their societies are good, they are innovative, they are fairly homogenous, and they come out well, without seemingly having DEI imposed on them. Now, my answer to that is that they're high performing not because they're homogenous. They're high performing because they have good societies. That is, their politics and economy has developed over the decades to produce a fair social contract that has reduced inequality, like we used to have, where, the same people that praise these countries for this would say that they pay too much in taxes. And so they have good education, often free education. Some of them have inherited wealth or wealth derived from natural resources. But they also, redistribute wealth. And that's the point, the low inequality. So there's not that high level of social friction that would require, diversity to help overcome some of the barriers that you could butt up against if you were, say, a company in the UK or US or Australia. I think the point there is that they have, they have high trust. Our societies are more skeptical and more questioning because of the issues that we have in our society. So when we have diverse groups, we're going to have friction, and that's also going to help each other grow and help us to, if you're a corporation that has a particular market, could help you expand that market if you were to, perhaps listen to voices from other communities, things like that. So what DEI doesn't mean to me, and maybe this is an issue in the US where it has become so highly regulated, and if that is perhaps some of the reason for the pushback from particular US commenters who are passionately against DEI, it could be because of that, and I'm not, fully aware of all of that. But what DEI is not to me is ticking boxes. It's not to me a quota system. It's not to me that if you are choosing a percentage of people from this community, then you're automatically cutting people from another community and at the same time possibly reducing merit. Now, I know there are famous cases in the US where I think it was some universities, a particular university was doing a medical degree and they really went all out on DEI, and then they had a really poor pass rate. And so I don't know, that it's not all going to work. So I don't know what happened there. That would be some failure along the line of the school. And it's not what I think of when I think of DEI. So in essence, I think of DEI as not lowering the bar, but widening the scan. And so I don't see so much of people missing out rather than more people being included. And perhaps my vision of it is not how it plays out in the States. That said, though, I think that, the workplace should represent society, and that if your society is diverse, your workplace, if it's not diverse, it doesn't reflect where you geographically exist. And that, to me, is most certainly a disconnect and is most certainly disadvantageous to you. I will end this with my usual statement about these kinds of things, that I think the bigger problem in our society is social mobility. And I think the issue that we face more in this world is the way labor is employed, the wages that are paid, the share of productivity. And if we were to look at some of the countries in Northern Europe, I think that's one of the things they're doing better. And perhaps it's not that they do that because they don't have DEI, but perhaps it's better because they have a better social contract. This is Langstandard.
If you're still here, honestly, you have no idea how much it helps if you subscribe. I'll keep these coming.